To process payments received for interest that is accumulating in the system, you have to do this from the receipt screen. And select your client from the pull down as you normally would, keeping in mind that you must check the bank that is appropriate as well as the transaction date. The payment method is selected as anything is usually selected, so if they paid by debit card, check, MasterCard, whatever the case, you must choose. In this case, I'm just going to choose a check. The difference for interest being processed is that it is not actually a receipt under the transaction type. You need to select interest. The reason you need to select the interest from the transaction type is that interest only accumulates in the system. It doesn't actually post it to accounts receivable until you receive it. So that's why we require a separate transaction type. So once you've selected the interest and the amount received, in this case the client has paid the full $50 interest that is outstanding, I'm going to make a reference of paid interest. That will display on their statement of account for them so they know what they've paid. Once you've selected that information, you've got the amount received and the interest, you could process this payment and it will create 2 entries. When you select process, it lets you know 2 entries are processed. The first entry is to post the accumulated interest to the accounts receivable, and the second one is to post it as being paid. On your deposit slip, you will see that we've received the $50. Okay? It clears up the interest for you, but doesn't touch on the actual accounts receivable for the client. Okay? Interest can be edited by double-clicking on this box as well. So I'm just going to put back in an imaginary amount of interest, a lump sum of $25 here, and we process that. If the client has only paid a portion, so if the client only paid $10 of the amounts received, you'd still use the same interest as the transaction type. The payment method is still required and a reference is also required. Okay. If they had only paid $10 of that and we process that, okay, and you were going to write off the remaining $15, okay, you double click in the box again, and the way to adjust it is just by selecting a minus $15. If they're no longer going to, or they're not going to pay that amount, you can adjust it by just putting in a negative figure for that. That clears up all the interest outstanding, and in our deposit view you'll see we had both amounts in here for the $50 and the $10. Normally, of course, you would have adjusted the amount prior to posting the $50, but the second portion was just as an example for you. And once you've finished the interest processing, you can continue with any type of receipt as you normally would. Okay, but remember to keep it as 2 separate transactions, that the receipts for actual accounts receivable and invoices are processed under one amount, and the receipts for interest are processed separately.